Hello and welcome to Rally Raid. My name is Greg Villalobos and I am the proud owner of the bike you see behind me, which is a CB500X after the rally treatment. And the reason why it looks like this is because of this man here. This is Adam Mitchinson from Rally Raid, and we've just spent the last, well, how long have we been working on it?
48 hours?
Yeah, literally without not much sleep in that. Turning the stock CB500 that I bought a couple of weeks ago into this bike. This film is just going to explain a little bit about what we did and why, and Adam's going to explain about some of the kit, the Rally Raid kit that's been put on it and how it works, and thinking about why it was designed that way. Let's talk about what we did with the bike and the process of building it. So it was like 48 very busy hours ago now. I'm trying to remember how we started, but we started with the engine guards. So, what's the story there? Why there? And what are the Rally Raid engine guards?
So the first thing we looked at in terms of getting the bike transformed, you need engine protection for an overland or travel bike. That's a must-have. But one of the issues with the Honda is because of the design of the engine, you can't actually sit it on a centre stand very easily. So by putting a heavy-duty engine guard with a flat bottom on, you can get it on a centre stand, get both wheels up, work on the bike yourself, which is quite important really for a bike that you're looking to sort of ride off-road and solo adventure.
Okay. So the stock engine guards, yeah, they're quite flimsy, they're quite plastic.
Yeah, just a very small plastic. They're actually mounted onto the engine, which is kind of a no-no in engineering terms. Our engine guard comes all the way back and mounts where your centre stand would. So no force is going through the engine itself or any engine bolts or the sump. It's a direct, straight to the back of the frame, and that's really the strongest way to do it.
So an engine guard that's mounted to the engine is bad because?
If you take impact, it's going to come directly through the engine guard and you could potentially rip your sump off. You're going to shear bolts out in your actual engine, which is, just don't want that happening, especially if you're out sort of riding.
Yeah, okay, great. And so what's the design of that? So the engine guard's got, it comes in like 3 pieces, doesn't it?
Yeah, so because of the nature of the CB, we've had to do a tubular design, but we've used our own stainless guards underneath, so you still get full protection. Unfortunately, just the header pipes come out a bit too far to create a full wraparound sort of enduro one. So what we've done is a lightweight tubular design, a guard on the front and a guard on the side, and it really keeps you protected.
Started with the engine guard, got it up on a stand, and what did we do next? I think we started working on the rear of the bike. Yeah,
so we dropped the rear wheel out, got to the swing arm, and then we started working on the link plates and rear shock. So that's the first sort of job with the suspension. We went for a level 2 kit on yours. We do offer a level 1 and level 2. A level 1, it's no less quality than level 2. The reason we do it is because a lot of people want to keep the OEM seat height of the bike, whereas the level 2 kit raises it 25mm front and rear.
Yeah.
Like I said yourself, I think you're about 5'8" on a good day, and the level 2 is just sort of on the border for you, but there are some riders that would like a bit more of a flat foot. You're fairly experienced on taller bikes, so it's not so much of a problem for yourself.
Okay, so level 1 and level 2 are, there's no difference in quality, it's about ride height. When we were stripping them down, it was quite obvious to see that what we were taking out was very different to what we were putting in. So what were we taking out and what were we putting in?
So starting from the rear end, I mean, all our suspension kits have been developed alongside Tractive. They're a great company in the Netherlands, really experienced guys, and their stuff is really sort of top quality, especially even down to the engineering and machining on their parts. You can just hold it and you can feel the quality there. A lot of the components we now machine in-house in the UK, so that's in Rally Raid HQ, we do all that ourselves. And we get a great control by having it in-house over quality and sort of the finish of everything, so we can ensure that everything's looking good. So the rear shock, the actual unit we took out from the Honda, the standard Honda, was very basic. There's no adjustment. It's a pressed sort of steel construction shock. I think it weighs about 4.5 kilos, which is a fair heft of a shock. And in replacement of that, we put the Tractive Level 2 shock. Your particular one has a piggyback reservoir, so there's an external oil reservoir for the shock.
What does the oil do? Why do you need oil? What's good about having oil in this kind of suspension?
Yeah. So you've gone from a fairly basic sort of pressed steel construction spring. There's no real damping or any controls on it. The Tractive one we put in, it's an aluminium body spring, so you've got high speed, low speed compression dampening through valves on an external reservoir. You've got rebound control. Your specific shock has been fit with a preload adjuster as well, so you can remotely from the front of the bike adjust your preload, which is great for luggage, you know, sort of carrying pillions and different terrain.
So on that, so I'm not, when you start talking about preload and adjustments and all that kind of stuff, I assume that's for like the Dakar guys who are kind of wanting to kind of put in good lap times and all the rest of it. But the interesting thing that we were talking about earlier is I might be riding this bike with no luggage, and then the next day I might put loads of luggage on, and that's going to change the weight on the bike. And so I guess being able to very easily adjust the suspension compensates for that.
That's it. Like I said, being able to get on the day decide sort of what weight you're going to carry, and like you're not in a competition sort of area with this bike, but being able to be comfortable on the trail, knowing that your bike's sort of balanced and set up exactly how you want, it's going to make your day more enjoyable.
What do I need to do? Do I need like kind of fancy tools to change it? You know, this is not the exact one that's on my bike, but it's a similar principle. So
this is a 310 shock with the actual preload adjuster on it is the same as your CB. The difference with having preload and no preload is night and day on a shock. So you've gone from something where you have no adjustment whatsoever, and now you've got 4 different types of adjustment, so you can really get the shock going well. This is a hydraulic preload adjuster developed by Tractive in the Netherlands, and how this works is you're forcing a capacity of oil into a large piston, quite a shallow piston here, and instead of manually winding on a preload nut like you would on a traditional shock, you simply start turning this knob here, and at a rate, quite a gentle rate because it's a high pressure system. This you've got up to 10 mil of preload straight off here. And the one on the CB that Greg has is actually on a remote reservoir down by the front of his bike, so he doesn't even have to get off the bike to do it, which is quite impressive. It's just one of the best things about it I've found is you don't damage your shock every time you want to change the preload on a 690 or a bike that has a traditional sort of adventure shock or off-road shock in it. You end up having to use the preload ring, and it's quite a job. There's not a lot of space in the frame, but this just makes it so much easier.
So from my point of view, what I understand is that we have a knob with a plus and minus, and I can turn it one way or the other way, and if I turn it towards the plus way, it's compressing the spring, so making it a firmer ride.
Yeah.
And if I want to back it off, I just turn it towards the minus side, and it's releasing the tension on the spring a little bit and making it softer. And in terms of what feels better for you, I guess it's just for me to experiment a bit and see what feels good.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, suspension is a bit of a dark art. You have to kind of look at what you want out of the bike, or if something strikes you as, oh, it's kicking me up the back end, you have to kind of have a reason to change the suspension. Some people might sort of get a bike back and start changing things without riding it, but we think it's best just to ride it as it comes. Everything that we sell comes pre-set up to a sort of a neutral level out of the shop. Like they put a couple of 100 miles on it, and then you start noticing, oh, perhaps this would be a little bit nicer, and having the controls there to sort of adjust those tiny reactions in the bike. Eventually you become sort of proficient in suspension through your own experience with the bike and through the adjustment you have.
Yeah, great.
I mean, you've got the same amount of adjustment on your shock now as you would have on like a full rally bike, which is pretty handy.
Sounds good. So suspension was done, great. And how long did that take roughly? It was about, we were messing around a little bit and trying to get it right, but it was at least an hour.
Yeah, I'd say an hour to an hour and a half.
Yeah. You could probably, if it was a new bike, you could probably get it done in half an hour, do you think?
Yeah, we work on a lot of new bikes and they're just sort of so much easier and cleaner to work on. It's just everything drops out straight away. There's never any issues.
Yeah. So it was about half an hour without any issues.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we went on to the exhaust.
Yeah, so while you had the rear wheel out of the bike and it was up on the stand, it's a good time to do the exhaust. It's in that sort of area. So we took your hefty OEM exhaust out and swapped it for a Scorpion tapered exhaust. That comes with a new linkage pipe as well. It sounds awesome. We took the baffle out. I think that's going to stay out for a while, but it just gives a nice sort of raspy. It's not over the top.
No, it's not too loud.
It's not offensive in any way, but it does give it a nice hint of aggression, I'd say.
So from my point of view, Rally Raid do a high exhaust and a low exhaust. I really like the look of the high exhaust, and that's what I've been riding on the Rally Raid bike. I think it's clear out of the way in terms of any potential knocks and damage, but it just kind of changes the look and makes it feel a bit more off-roady.
Yeah, completely.
And if I had my first choice, it would have been that high exhaust. But for me, this bike it's really important that I can take luggage and have luggage racks, and we tried it out, and it's not really designed, the high exhaust not ideal with luggage because you just increase the risk of the heat affecting the luggage. So we went for the low exhaust, which still looks great, and the low exhaust is a bit shorter, and it's designed to work well with luggage.
Yeah, it's still quite compact. Obviously, being lower, they've done as much development as they can at Scorpion to keep it tight into the bike.
Yeah, we didn't have to manually cut the old exhaust off. The old exhaust came off pretty.
Yeah, no, all the Scorpion stuff's plug and play. You don't have to take any bodywork off to do an exhaust on the CVs. it's just 110mm and another 13mm at the top, and the whole unit just slides off, slide the new one on, and easy as that really.
And the new one comes with, so that you've got the exhaust and you've got a connector pipe, and the connector pipe has got an option on it.
The Scorpion pipes come with a tab for bikes with a centre stand. Obviously you can't have the centre stand over-rotating up into the exhaust and damaging it. For Greg's specific needs, he's not going to use a centre stand, and the tyre profile that he's going to be using is quite thick, so we removed that tag just to make sure there wasn't going to be any sort of clearance issues.
So you don't need to take it off, but for neatness we took it off.
Yeah, that's for your needs, that's what we had to do, sort of thing.
Yeah, great. And it was, and it hangs off the footrest. It was, again, a half hour, really, not...
Yeah.
There was some, we had to tidy up some of the...
Yeah, you had a small carbon belt around the OEM exhaust. Unfortunately, yours had corroded, and it's been sort of quite a, not poorly looked after bike, but it's been out in the rain enough times. We just had to sort of jimmy that off and clean that up. But the Scorpion stuff always fitting nice, goes on and off easily.
Yeah.
It's just an awesome little product.
So it was one of the kind of the faster parts of the project in getting that exhaust on. It wasn't too much.
Yeah, no, it's just one of the plug and play.
Yeah. And does that exhaust actually improve the engine performance? Does it increase horsepower at all?
So from Scorpion, they said a 1.9 horsepower increase. I mean, it's kind of a negligible increase. You've changed tyres, and everything like that can have small pluses and minuses. A noticeable difference is in the mid-range of the bike. There is a lot more pull in the mid-range.
So this exhaust kind of improves torque in the mid-range as opposed to increasing overall engine power.
Yeah, I mean, generally exhausts don't work in the way that a lot of people think, where you stick it on and you instantly get, bang, 10 horsepower across the whole range of your engine. It's a small increase, but it does help, especially in the low to mid-range. You can notice a small difference in the amount of torque you've got there.
Yeah.
And we've also found it kind of revs out a little bit free at the top end as well. I've got one on my F, which I mainly use for the road riding and stuff like that, but the loss of back pressure at the higher rev range actually opens it out and lets it breathe a bit more freely.
Yeah, and for adventure riding, it's not really about more power; it's about more torque.
That's it. You're not going to be screaming down a lane on the rev limiter, but where it really matters is sort of the slow, controlled river crossings. That's an excellent example of where you want that low end torque, so you can have the confidence that you know you're not going to stall. If you hit some rocks, you just keep chugging on through.
Yeah.
And the Honda really does, just because it's parallel twin, it will just keep chugging through any sort of...
Yeah, I found it's very forgiving. Like earlier in the week when we were riding on my 450, you kind of, I mean, the 450's still reasonably forgiving, but you kind of want to make sure that you're always in the right gear. Whereas we were chugging along, and I didn't know if I was in second or third or sometimes even fourth. It was just going, you know. So that was helpful, and yeah, it's a forgiving engine in that respect.
Yeah, I think that's down to the power curve. It's got such a linear power curve. You can grab a handful of throttle anywhere within your rev range, and it's predictable. You know what the outcome of that's going to be. Whereas, like you said, on certain enduro bikes or other bikes, the power curve can be quite dramatic from sort of the low range to the mid range. So you're always searching for that sweet spot. But with the CB, it's kind of everywhere's a sweet spot in terms of the engine, isn't it?
Yeah. Change the wheel.
Yeah.
So why? What is the Rally Raid wheels like? Why are the wheels that come with the bike not very good for adventure riding?
So cast wheels generally have been proven to be quite brittle for adventure riding. they're tubeless only, so if you took a large crack or a ding while you're sort of out riding trails or adventure, whatever you're doing, you're going to get an air leak, and then obviously that stops you riding. The wheels that we produce, you've got the level 2 wheel kit, so that increases the front wheel size to a 19-inch. It gives you better off-road stability, you get the gyroscopic effect similar to an enduro bike. The road handling doesn't really drop that much, does it? It feels pretty good with the 19-inch.
Yeah, I mean, it's never going to be the same as a performance sports bike, but in terms of you don't feel unstable.
No, not at all. So the wheels that we make, the hubs we machine ourselves in the UK in-house. Again, that's really important for us to sort of do that ourselves because that's a key part of the process.
The wheel we've taken out, are we changing the dimensions? Are we putting a new dimension in? Like what we're putting in?
In terms of the rear wheel, you take out a 17 and put a 17 back in. That's fairly normal. The reason that we've chosen this wheel size is mainly for tyre choice. 19 and 17 is a great range of adventure, road and sort of off-road bias tyres out there. So it's just logical to go with a OEM profile and size. And obviously we've increased every other aspect of the wheel in terms of quality and strength.
So what tyres are on the wheels that I've been using?
On the bike you've been using and the one that you've got now, we've got the Motos, the Tractionator Adventures. They're really nice hardware and tyre. They're a large block tyre similar to sort of other tyres out there at the moment for adventure bikes. That's sort of where it's heading in for most tyres at the moment. And for good reason. They are a little bit vibey on the road, but what can you expect from a sort of a dual purpose tyre? But off-road, we've been really happy with them. We've been testing them for about, I'd say, 2 months now. They're not showing sort of signs of fast wear that we should be worried about. And we've ridden a lot of rocks in Wales and they haven't been shredding, so we're really happy with the performance of those.
Move forwards to the front of the bike.
Yeah.
And that's where things kind of slowed down a little bit.
Yeah.
It started getting a little bit more complicated. So I guess first of all we had to take all the fairings off, I guess.
That's it. We started to strip down, took the fairings off. The fairings on this bike are nice and easy to get off. They're quite doable as a sort of solo job. Once that's off, we took the forks out. We didn't quite do those yet. We took the triple clamp off. So we do away with the OEM triple clamp and we give our own billet aluminium triple clamp. This has a 25mm step which moves the forks down in turn 25mm, which gives you the increased ride height on the front.
So the difference between the OEM and the Rally Raid one, not just in terms of the quality of the production, but essentially we're putting a taller clamp in, which raises the handlebars, but also allows the forks to sit further down.
That's it, so you're getting a better standing position from the raise on the actual bar clamps themselves, so it's a nice neutral standing position. You can spend all day sort of standing on that bike.
Yeah.
And then by getting the 25mm drop on the forks, although the forks you can't physically extend by 25mm, what we've done is move them down 25mm and you're getting the full stroke of the fork by putting better internals and the linear wound spring in, which gives the effect of 25mm travel.
Okay, so in terms of fitting that triple clamp, it wasn't complicated, but there was some stuff that is probably worth helping people understand, particularly around the ignition
barrel.
So,
that's it.
Ignition barrel. So.
One of the sticking points is obviously security bolts. Every ignition barrel has one. Every manufacturer has a different way of doing them. Sometimes you get oval ones that are rounded out. On the Honda, they're completely rounded. You can't get anything in there. You could spend a lot of time, and we used to do it, drilling them out. It's kind of a necessary step to take to get the triple clamp on, obviously. So we had to find the best way to do it, and what we found is a Torx. Get Torx on an extension, and you tap it in with a mallet. You don't need to be hitting it crazy hard. And once you can feel the Torx is gripped in it, you can just simply undo it. I mean, it was about 5 seconds per bolt, as opposed to sitting there for sort of a couple of hours drilling and burning out some drills. And because security bolts are obviously designed to be very hard to drill and take out.
So I guess putting the triple clamp on was another, realistically, 45 minutes
about
maybe?
45 minutes for the triple clamp. It's more just sort of your bar and controls and keeping everything off the bike. You have to take a bit of time
Yeah.
You don't want to scratch the bike.
Yeah, I noticed you covered the tank there to make sure that nothing scratched it.
Yeah, it's just quite a common thing. As soon as you sort of take the triple clamps off or loosen the bar ends, it will spin around, hit the tank, and then you've done yourself some damage.
Yeah. We took the forks over to your bench and just talk me through the process. So I think the first thing was emptying the fluids.
So before we took them to bench, we cracked the top nut off the forks whilst it was in the triple clamp. You don't want to be putting your forks to sanction in a vise because you'll crush them and damage the internals. So the best time to do it is while it's clamped into the bike. So once we loosened this, took it over to the bench, we dropped out the bottom bolt which attaches the damper rod and secures the whole fork assembly. From there the oil starts draining out. We undid the top cap which releases the vacuum, then all the oil came out as you saw. From here you've got a few internals, you've got the plastic OEM spacer. Plastic's a bit of a no-no generally in suspension if you're going to be using it for off-road use, so we obviously get rid of that. We actually take out all the internals completely of the forks and replace them with everything that we've machined and developed with Tractive. So it's a full sort of complete rework of the front suspension.
Yeah, for me observing that, it was night and day in terms of quality of what we were taking out and what was sitting there ready to go back in.
Yeah.
So I guess something that I picked up on there is when you're disassembling the forks and taking stuff out, it's quite helpful to lay everything out in the order that they came out, and then also have everything that's going back in the right order.
Yeah.
So what did we put in what order in the process? And also, we didn't just drop it all in and go. There was some processes that you took in terms of filling it with fluid.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk through that?
Going backwards on a fork is quite hard, so you have to try and do it properly the first time. Like taking time, as you said, is quite important. So once we'd completely disassembled and removed everything from the fork, you're ready to start assembling it again. So we gently drop the damper rod that we've machined into the fork, and you just have to give it a bit of a shake. There's a chamfer at the bottom of the fork that the damper rod seats in, and obviously if it's not seated in there, that's the first component, everything else from there upwards is going to be wrong. So by dropping it in gently, holding the fork and just giving it a small shake like that, you can feel when it's located in the bottom of the damper, in the bottom of the fork leg. Then we put it back in the vise and secure that with the bolt that goes in, and that's your security bolt that goes into the bottom of the damper rod. So
from my point of view, I don't really understand all the physics of it, but put it simply, like what does a damper rod do?
So a damper rod essentially just controls the velocity of oil flowing through the fork. It's a damping mechanism.
Okay. So what went in next then? So
after the damper rod, we had a low-speed damping unit. So again, this is another oil control system. Just so in our forks now, we've got two different types of control: low speed and high speed. And this is sort of the where you'd notice it most on the road or sort of the light going stuff, especially your sacks. That's quite an important sort of aspect of suspension, is having that low speed control exactly right.
Okay.
After that, we put the preload packer in. So again, that's we talked about preload earlier, but we're just making sure that you've got the correct amount of tension on the fork and on the fork spring as it stands with just the weight of the bike. So it's sort of set up out the box for an average rider.
Yeah.
After the preload packer, we have a plastic fork guide. Just the nature of forks in general, they don't always sit dead in the middle of the fork. And after that, it's just a case of putting the spring in and your top cap. So on your one, you've got preloaded just a top cap. So in addition to the preload spacer at the bottom, you can then get an extra 10 mil. So it's 5 mil plus or minus from where we put it in. And
did we just put all the oil in one go? Like, so there were some stages that you went through in terms of making sure that there wasn't any air.
That's it. So the capacity of the forks on your bike is 450 mils. So what we do is we split that down into 3 150 mil blocks. Obviously, if you're pouring a lot of oil, oil holds oxygen and air a lot, as we all know, and you pour it all in one go, and you have all that air trapped in the oil. So by pouring it in small amounts and bleeding it by putting your hand on the top and forcing it down like that, you're bringing the air to the top.
Okay.
And you're just trying to make sure there's as little air as possible in the oil that you're putting in the bike.
Okay. So you took that total capacity and you broke it down into, I think, 3 sections, and you just poured it in each section. So I
generally stop after every 150 mil just to make sure that there's smooth action on the fork, and there's no oil. It's a bit excessive bubbles. You can look down the top and you'll see it's got a bit of a foam or something like that if it needs going more. And what you're looking for is just, like I said, smooth action and no gargling. You don't want any gargling sounds or sort of hissing or anything like that. And you saw yourself, once we've done it a couple of times, it was nice, quiet and smooth. One of the interesting things about the forks is you measured capacity with, instead of volume, you use distance from the top of the fork. So although the capacity is 450 millilitres, depending on sort of machining tolerances of Honda themselves, it can often be different. So it's quite important to measure that from the top of the fork when the fork's fully compressed.
Right, yes, the important thing there is that we had the fork on the ground and we pushed the top part all the way down so it wouldn't go any further, and then you're taking your measurement from that point and you're basically measuring the amount of air.
Yeah,
really.
that's it.
Yeah.
You can't be exact with sort of capacity of oil. Every container holds a layer of oil. You can't pour it all out and things like that. So the only real way to do it is sort of measuring from the top with an accurate.
And what figure were you looking for?
I was looking for 120 mil from the top.
Okay.
But what I do is I go down to 140 because it gives you 20 mil of lead up. So you know I'm 15 mil away, I'm 10 mil away.
Okay.
Because obviously getting oil back out of the fork is a bit harder than putting it in.
Okay, so we've got the cap on, and I guess that whole process, for someone that knows what they're doing and they've done it quite a few times before, to get one fork done was half an hour, maybe a bit less?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say 20-25 minutes is a good time for a fork. If you're doing them in 10 minutes, you're probably rushing.
Yeah.
Even if you are competent, you just want to slow down and think about it.
So really, in terms of getting both of them done, like an hour is a comfortable amount of time.
That's an agreeable sort of value.
Yeah. Okay, so at that point, presumably it's finger tight, is it, the cap?
The top cap, again, same way as when we took it off. You don't want to be putting it in the vise and trying to tighten it like that. You're going to damage your fork. So we tighten them up as much as we can by hand, just by gripping the fork like that, and then we put them in the bike. And then once you've got the triple clamp tightened, you can tighten them like you would then. You're not going to risk any damage to the internals. The
forks are done, they're off the bench. We just stick them back in?
So yeah, you're going to get them in sort of finger tight. One of the main reasons for that is obviously the triple clamp's still loose. You need to align the whole front end. So the best thing to do is sort of do it all finger tight, make sure it's all aligned, and you can check. You don't want to be doing your triple clamp up and then having to force it round. So just keep everything loose, do it up gently, and sort of take your time, making sure you're not putting any excess pressure in places that it shouldn't be. You probably want about 5 mil, between 3 and 5 mil of the fork sticking out the top. Any lower than this, and you can risk sort of crushing the internals. Any higher, obviously, you're going to crush the thread of the preload adjuster.
Okay. So yeah, so it's something that I've done on my enduro bike is that occasionally you'll crash and things are twisted, and the way to get out of that is to, just like you say, like undo them, and then you can bounce it and it kind of straightens itself. Is that the principle?
Yeah, that's it. The front wheel, the front end of a bike should really straighten itself to how it wants to be. You don't want to be forcing it to look straight or anything like that. It will find its own sort of natural position, and that's where the bike's happy and most secure.
think that just changing the bars is quite straightforward and quick, but actually that was actually one of the longest kind of bits of the build. It took a while to get from start to finish on that. So I guess the first part of that is that everything's on quite firmly and they're all held on by these bar ends from the OEM. So what did we have to do to get rid of them?
So the OEM bar ends, they have a Phillips head in the end that's kind of lying to you a little bit about how you can get them out. A lot of the time, the only way to get them out, you've got to pull the grips back and you'll have two tags, one on the top side and the lower side of the bars. You just need to punch these through with a small mallet. You don't need to hit them too hard. They're very soft, sort of thin tags. And it's just a case of pulling it out once you've done that.
Yeah. So it's not just a simple unscrew.
No, you could spend a lot of time trying to unscrew that, but all you need to do is push the grip up, hit the two tags, and that can be quite a quick job once you know what you're doing.
So then we had to get the grips off, and in the past I've used WD-40 and people use hairspray and stuff, but you had a different approach.
Yeah, so for the grips on the Honda and for every other bike, what I do is get an airline, and you can break the seal of the glue, get the airline unit into the actual grip and expand it, pump a load of air in and hold the grip at the far end, and the grip will expand and you can slide it off really easily. I mean,
that was a great tip. I noticed that the controls don't peel out. We had to undo them.
Yeah, a lot of bikes, they come off. On the Honda, they actually just come apart like that. To get all the bar controls off, you actually need to take the bars out and sort of do a motion like that. You haven't got enough length on the cables to take them all off in one go. They're held in by a small pin, a 6mm pin that goes into a pre-cut hole on the OEM bar. So you do, on whichever bar you're going to use, you have to redo that hole. And that's just a security measure to stop the bar controls sort of rotating under any pressure. That's obviously really important for the throttle side. The left side not so much, but it's a good measure to have. You
used the OEM bars to figure out where to put the holes on the new bars.
Yeah.
So first of all, what bars were we putting back on?
So we're using Pro Taper. They're the Pastrana/ATV bend. They're a new bar for us, but they're very similar to ones that we've been using previously. And like you said, one of the easiest ways to do it is by measuring the hole distance on the OEM bars to the end of the bar grip. You actually have to plus 5mm, just because of how they're set up out the factory. So you're looking for that distance plus 5mm, and that will be the centre hole for your new security mount.
Okay.
The rotation angle, however, is quite important. So the easiest way to do that is lay both bars down flat, so you've got the bend coming up, and do it by eye. That's the only real way to sort of do it.
Okay. And then it was as simple as just reinstalling those into the triple clamp, I guess.
Yeah, that's it. You put the bars and the bar controls, so you put the bar controls onto the bars before you put them in triple clamps for the same reason as we did with taking them off, and then just drop them in the top clamp, and that was about job done.
We changed the OEM levers as well. So what did we put on, and the protection that we put on as well?
So we took the OEM levers out. There's no adjustment on the OEM levers. They're fairly long, so they do foul a lot of hand guards. The ones we use, we don't make ourselves, but we buy them. We're very happy with the quality of them. And they have a 6-stage positioning system, so you've got 6 different positions from sort of very close to quite far away, depending on how big your hands are and your sort of terrain you're riding, how much control you need. And they're quite a bit shorter as well, which gives you sort of one finger braking and clutch control, which is reducing fatigue.
I really like that one.
Yeah, it's a nice addition. Yeah. And they look great on the bike. They're nice quality levers.
Yeah, especially if you're coming from an off-road background where one finger gear and brakes are kind of more standard.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said to me this is your first bike with a cable clutch, so yeah. You might be 2-finger clutching for a while.
I don't know what you're saying. And then we used BARKBUSTERS, and again, putting those BARKBUSTERS on, there was a lot of fiddling at the end to get everything positioned right. So I guess easily put aside an hour for that whole process, and possibly even more, depending how much fiddling you need to do.
In terms of in time, the controls can be a real snagging point in the build. You can run into lots of little issues that maybe you didn't foresee, and it all depends on sort of your own setup of what bars you're using, your bike, and the lever sort of positioning as well. But once you're there, it's a nice looking setup.
Yeah, and it feels great.
Yeah,
it's great. Okay, so the bars are all in place with one thing left to do on the front end, and I guess it was the wheel.
Yeah, front wheel conversion. So you've got the 19-inch front wheel, and this retains all our wheels retain OEM disc and ABS ring sort of fitment. So that's just a quick swap over. And you get a new fender. You've obviously gone up 2 inches in wheel size, so you need a new fender to suit that. And we use a high quality BMW fender for that, and it looks great on the bike.
My level 2 kit is a 19-inch going back in, spoked, stronger, all the rest of it. And I guess basically what we've done is we've just lifted the front a little bit.
Yeah, so the 19-inch wheel does give you a bit of lift on the front, which again increases the travel. Plus that, with the 25mm you've already got, and the 19-inch, you end up at actually about an inch, just over an inch of rise on the front end, which is a fair amount of ground clearance increase, and definitely notice it sitting on the bike in more upright and higher position.
And so the level 1 is a standard 17-inch goes back in.
So the level 1 wheel kit, yeah, that's a 17-17 setup, the same as OEM, and we use the OEM tyre profile as well. So if you did want, you could put the OEM tyres straight onto our wheel setup, which is quite important for a lot of people because they don't want to be adding height with their different tyres and stuff like that.
Yeah, so we've got the Motor's Tractionated Adventures on the front as well. And can you mix it and match the level 1s and the level 2s?
So one of the reasons that we have to do the level 1, level 2, you can't physically get a 19-inch front wheel into the bike without doing the suspension upgrades. The front wheel fails the radiator. So if you have a level 1 kit, you can only have a level 1 wheel kit. You can have a level 1 wheel kit with a level 2 kit and work backwards like that, but you need that suspension lift to get the 19-inch front wheel in.
Okay, and then just fitting the plastics back on is fairly straightforward. I mean, it's helpful that we're 2 of us because there's one little connector, but other than that, it's just bolt it all back.
Yeah, I mean, it's doable with one person. It just takes a little bit of sort of time and thinking. But the way the Honda's designed, all the plastics are fairly nice and robust. It's just 3 units really to get the whole front end off. So once we'd had all the triple clamp tightened, the forks we were all happy with and they were seated, we put the fairing on and that was sort of the front end finish for us.
And then we went to finish off the back. So this is where it's completely personal choice as to whether or not you want all the luggage stuff. For me, I've got a bike that has got soft luggage. The Enduro bike has kind of throw-on luggage. It hasn't got any racks. So I really wanted something that I could fit rack system luggage to. So you've got a set of luggage racks here. They're fairly straightforward to fit. You just take the seat off and it's a few bolts and it's done. What's the thinking behind the size of them? Because they're quite different to the standard big ones that you can get.
Yeah, so this is a mid-weight bike really, and with that we have to kind of keep everything in scale. You can't be loading up a mid-weight bike with so much luggage at the rear of it because it would just offset the sort of feel and the handling of the bike and not only add a lot of stress to the subframe. The Honda's got a good subframe for mounting on, so we can get some nice luggage racks like the ones we've got. They're not too deep, so you're running into sort of wheel clearance issues. So I'd say they're just about in scale for the size of the bike.
Yeah, I think they look great. They're like Adam says, they're in scale. They might be a little bit restrictive in terms of I couldn't put anything on there, but I can very easily get my Krieger OS luggage on there. I think I should be able to get the Adventure Spec Magadans on, and I think any kind of serious off-road soft luggage should fit it.
Yeah.
I did have an option to put a rack on the top as well, but I opted not to because I'm unlikely to be taking pillions on this, so I see the pillion seat as another option for strapping some soft luggage to, but we'll see at some point I may choose to.
Yeah, I mean, luggage, like you said, luggage is personal preference. You've got your own needs, and you've kind of got a bit of a plan with the kit you've already got and how you want to fit that to the bike. So because of the modular system, you've been able to get exactly sort of what you want out of it. And if you do want a rear rack at a later date, then you just attach it to the soft luggage racks.
Yeah, it was super easy to kind of to put that stuff on. So yeah. One of the real kind of noticeable difference between the OEM and the bike that I've been riding, the Rally Raid version, is the foot pegs are huge. So one of the last things we did was swap those over. So what's the story behind the foot pegs that you guys do?
So the OEM ones that come on the bike, they've got a plastic cover. They're barely over an inch in depth in terms of across the length of your foot, which is actually very small for an off-road bike. So what we've done, we've gone for a stainless rally style peg. They're serrated, so they're high grip, and you've got a good platform there. It's almost over double the width of the OEM peg, and that reduces your fatigue through the day, gives you more sort of ply on the bike to move it around under you. It's just kind of important. You don't want to be slipping a peg off-road, especially in sort of slippery or wet conditions.
Yeah, they're huge. They're really stable. And I think you guys are developing something else that might be coming out.
Yeah, we're looking at doing sort of a universal set of billet footrests and a hanger to adjust the geometry of the position on the footrests. This will give users, depending on their size and riding style, a bit more sort of like play with how they want the bike to feel under them.
Yeah, great. Final thing, I guess, was the side stand. So we've changed the height of the bike, so you guys have got a different sized side stand.
Yeah, so we're expecting people also to use luggage, and there's a lot of different options of what people are going to put on the bike. So we've made an uprated side stand. That's a stronger construction than the OEM one. Like you said, it's got increased length to adjust the difference in angle because of the suspension difference. But we've also changed the spring positioning to give the spring more tension on the actual stand, so it's less likely to flick down off-road riding and less likely to flick up. It takes a nice amount of force. And like I said, everything's been designed to sort of give an OEM feel, so it doesn't feel like you wouldn't know it as a different stand if no one told you.
And then one of kind of the non-performance enhancing bits, but actually the really exciting bit for the whole build was like the graphics at the end, and it kind of really transforms the look of it. And I was quite worried, like I didn't really want a black on black bike that was like a Batman bike. So for me, it was kind of a key point to take the old stuff off and put the new stuff on. So you've obviously got graphics that you've designed and they look great. Any tips in terms of taking the old ones off and putting the new ones on?
I'd say heat them gently. A lot of people, you get a heat gun, you put it really hot, really close up, and all you're looking for is a gentle heat to melt loosen the adhesive behind the graphic. You're not looking to actually melt the graphic onto the bike or anything like that. So just good distance away from the bike with a heat gun. You don't want to be up close to it, and just take your time. On this model, the graphics in particular, they're quite sort of far under the fairing. It actually goes under a piece of plastic, so you have to just take your time and peel it and finish at that point, so it'll pull it off under there.
I noticed you kind of cut a little strip off the back, and then that was a great tip to be able to start in the middle and then work outwards.
Yeah,
it helped you position it.
Yeah, so the graphics are a very strong adhesive on them. Obviously, they need to be for sort of their longevity, and it's a very common thing. You get a set of graphics and you'll peel the whole back off it, and you think, "Oh God, I've got an A4 size of sticky plastic with dust everywhere and dirty hands." So what I do is I peel back a small amount of the graphic and cut with a pair of scissors. You can use a knife, but I don't suggest it, because if you cut too hard, you'll come through the print of the plastic on the reverse. And you just cut no more than a centimetre width strip across the graphic, and you can use this to just sort of test it on the bike, test fit it, make sure all the sort of lines and angles match up how you want them, and then you can peel it back without damaging and stretching the graphic, which is quite a common thing, and keep repositioning it with very little effort. And then when you want to stick it on, you've got 2 points to start from, so you can do half the graphic at a time, making sure you haven't got any air bubbles, and sort of just a nice smooth, take your time, just backwards and forwards like that, just working the graphic onto the plastic.
That was it, and at that point I had a big beaming smile. Oh, the last thing we did was we put an original deflector on the front, because my bike had come with a great big tall one. It was a more intense couple of days than I'd expected. I thought it was, I mean, it essentially is just a unbolt and bolt back on system, but in terms of the amount of stuff that we put on and the care that you took, it took 2 days basically.
Yeah, definitely. And you can try and rush. We did it on the first night. We thought we could get this done, but there comes a certain point when you're working on the bike when you're wasting your energy, you're not being as efficient or as careful as you want to be, and at that point it's best just to say leave it for the next day. So
if you've never kind of done this kind of thing before, I definitely think giving yourself, don't rush it, giving yourself a couple of days. I really wouldn't be putting this kit on 2 days before you leave on a journey. I think that would end up being quite a stressful experience. So a bit of time, 2 days, some of the basic tools that you need. You know, you don't need to be a mechanic to do this job, but you do need to take your time and think it through. So yeah. So Adam, thank you so much. It's been really, really interesting finding out about Rally Raid and watching you at work. I've been really, really impressed. It's been great to understand more about how the bike is put together and why. I'm just really, really looking forward to riding it.
Well, definitely enjoyed building it, and it's great to get someone else's perspective while you're building it also, so I've learned a lot from it as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting now because I've got the 450 if I'm just going out and doing some kind of proper trail riding. But the thing for me that this opens up is the idea that I can now get on a bike and ride to Wales and then do some trails down there and come back. Okay, it may not be as capable on the trickiest stuff as the 450, but that's the compromise, because if I didn't have this bike, I wouldn't be there in the first place, because I don't want to put my bike in a van and drive it down because I haven't got a van.
A bike's like a tool, I think. And like I said, if the tool's not working how you want it, you won't use the tool. And if the bike's not capable of, like I said, you want to do long distance journeys, your 450 is maybe not up to it in the way that you want it to be, so you just wouldn't use it for that, and you'd end up not using it at all.
Yeah, and I think one of the processes that I've gone through to get to this point is doing the Trans-Euro Trail on my 450, which absolutely fine, totally capable, 1,200 miles, 9 days. It was fine, but there was only really small sections of that trip where I really felt like I needed that 450, especially in Northern Europe. Having something that was a bit more road biased and road comfortable would have been absolutely fine. So that's really kind of the thinking about this. So thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure. And
I guess to find out more about Rally Raid, there's the website, rallyraidproducts.
Yeah, www.rally-raidproducts.co.uk.
Okay, great. And you'll find lots more about the Rally Raid bikes, the CB500X, the brand new BMW GS310, as well as the 690, which was the classic first one. You'll find a lot more of that online if you just want to Google it and go on the forums and YouTube. For me, you're going to be seeing a bit more of this bike being used in some of my work with Adventure Spec and testing some gear on this and doing some more trips. And general trail ridey, filmy things. So you can find me and you can find Rally Raid. And we're on all sorts of social media.
And as an addition, we've just released the CB500X standalone website, so that's got a lot more detailed information about all the kits on it as well.
Great. You may even be watching this film on that website. Okay, I need to go and ride home now. So yeah, thank you again, and yeah, see you in some future films.